So what is your field?
Well, I have a doctorate in political science, comparative constitutional law, which focused on Latin America. In fact, the doctorate dealt with authoritarian democracies in Uruguay, Argentina and Chile, and I have a second doctorate which is more in the field of political theory, which I did when I spent some time in Cambridge near Boston. At the time I was affiliated with the law school, the Department of Philosophy and the Center for International Affairs. So the second doctorate focuses on legitimacy and calls upon philosophy, history, sociology, law as a way to tackle the issue of legitimacy in a very pluridisciplinary fashion.
Since you started, how has your field evolved?
Well, it has evolved quite a bit. I mean, when I started working on the issue of legitimacy, for instance, political philosophy was not giving too much attention, at least in Europe, to what was being done in America. So now, of course, we pay great attention to what is being done both in the field of ethics, in the field of political philosophy in the US. And I would say that in the past 6-7 years, I think we are now going beyond the West, and we are getting more and more curious about what is being done, among other things, in Asia. Myself, I spent time in Japan and China. I spent almost 7 years in Japan and China, and I can see that in recent years more attention is being given to what is being produced intellectually in Asia, of course, especially in China.
Do you think there is more interdisciplinarity?
Well, we talk a lot about it, and in fact we hear that this is something which is underway, but I think that there is still a long way to go. Partly because people to this day tend to be trained first and foremost in one field, and also because the way universities are organized is such that you still have departments which are at the very core of how research is being done in universities, and which are the core also of how disciplines or issues are being taught.
How do you think your field should have evolved?
Should have evolved.
Yeah. What were your expectations?
Well, I didn't really have specific expectations. My take on my work has been always to favor issues over debates. I have always been interested in a number of issues, of themes, and rather than trying to address these issues within the context of one given academic field, I have tried to call upon a plurality of academic fields, as I said, law, philosophy, political science, international relations, international law, as a way to try to, for instance, on the issue of legitimacy, as a way to try to put forward the most comprehensive and systematic approach possible on this issue. So I would say that personally, I would tend to think that favoring issues and calling upon a multiplicity of fields as a way to really address a given issue would be the way to go. But I don't think that it has been the approach so far, both actually in Europe and in America, partly because once again universities and recruitment is happening on a academic field basis.
And what initiatives did you take at the United Nations University?
Well, when I was based in Tokyo, I really my focus was on international ethics, on philosophy of international law. So the collective research project in which I was involved and my own work tried to really bring to a given topic a plurality of disciplines. For instance, we did quite a bit of work on the legitimacy of international organizations. We did quite a bit of work on the ethics of international affairs, and rather than addressing these issues within the confines of one discipline, we brought to the table historians, philosophers, political scientists, a variety of people as a way to tackle the issue on which we were focusing from a variety of angles. So that's one thing. Another thing that I have developed in the past years is to try to really go beyond the West in terms of thinking about global issues. Very often in Europe or in America, we tend to claim that we generate scholarship on global issues and that this scholarship is truly global. In fact, it is not the case, because it is very much building upon work being done essentially in America and Europe. Global scholarship on global issues to this day is essentially an American-European dialogue. And so, having spent time in Asia, primarily in Japan and a bit in China, I realized that in fact the global dimension of Western global scholarship was everything but global. So in the past 5 years, I have tried to really re-educate myself and open up the gates, if you will, the intellectual and policy gates, so that we bring to the table issues, perspectives which are beyond the West. So I do this in my own research work, but also in the collaborative work in which I am involved now.
How do you see the future of academia itself?
Well, I would see maybe three areas. First of all, I think that we should put issues rather than debates front and center. In the end, the goal is to have debates servicing the issues, and very often in academia, theories, rather than being viewed as tools, are here to be validated or disqualified. I think that that's the wrong way. That's the wrong approach. We have to really put issues front and centers, and whatever theories we have on the market, if you will, on the intellectual market, we should use them as a tool to really bring clarity as much as possible on what is unfolding in the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing has to do with the need to internationalize humanities or globalize humanities and social sciences. Here at the UN, one thing that I witnessed, that I came to realize, is the fact that the people who are conceptualizing and implementing the global grammar of tomorrow, if you will, are people who are being trained, diplomats, are people who are being trained in the fields of, in soft fields, if you will, humanities and social sciences. The diplomat in general is someone who has been trained in the field of law, history, philosophy, literature, and so on. It happens that these fields are highly national or nationalized bodies of knowledge. And for me, in order to really try to think better at the global level, we have to denationalize or globalize these fields having to do with the humanities and the social sciences. So it doesn't mean that we should, of course, disregard or overlook the national dimension of these academic fields. In fact, we should keep them, because we're going to continue to be French, American, Japanese, etc. But we should add to this national layer of knowledge additional layers having to do with other cultures, other intellectual and cultural traditions, but also having to do with looking into somehow dovetailing better than it is the case today, the national and the international dimension. So that would be the second recommendation that I would make regarding the way forward for universities. Of course, this is complicated because the way research and teaching is organized or are organized in Europe and America, and for that matter elsewhere, is very much done on the basis of a division of faculties, if you will. So that's something which would have to be overcome, and it's not an easy proposition. The third dimension would be, as much as possible, to really bring together the theoretical approach and the practical approach. Once again, I'll give you an example. Most of the people who are, for instance, doing research and teaching on international organizations, be it the UN, UNESCO, the World Bank, and all these things, most of the people who are teaching and doing research on international politics or on international law tend not to have a practical experience of the field on which they write and which they teach. And I think that it would be very, very useful to really facilitate for whoever does research in these areas, and these are living areas, for whoever teaches in these areas to really be able to combine a practical perspective and a theoretical perspective.
And how would you implement that?
Well, for instance, a simple methodology, a simple way would be to in fact make sure that researchers, professors have access to sabbaticals, and that these sabbaticals in fact organized in such a way that the person could spend 1 year, 2 years on sabbatical, within international organizations, working for a mission. There are all kinds of ways in which we could facilitate having more interactions between the practical sector, be it public or private, and the theoretical sector.